I was betrayed in my own living room by the people I built my world around. So I walked out the door, not in anger, but with a plan. When I struck back, it wasn't revenge, it was justice. When I walked through the front door, I expected the usual, maybe the sound of the TV, doors humming while setting the table, my boys arguing over who finished the cereal. Instead, what greeted me was silence. A heavy, unnatural silence. They were all there, my wife, my two sons, my mother, and my best friend, Kyle, sitting on the living room couch like it was some kind of intervention. Their faces were unreadable, hands resting too calmly on their laps. Not one of them looked at me. I closed the door slowly behind me, setting my briefcase down with deliberate calm. My shirt was still damp from the rain outside, my shoulders sore from a 12-hour day at the firm. I should have been home to rest. But now, something told me this wasn't going to be that kind of evening. "What's going on?" I asked, keeping my voice steady. My oldest son, Matthew, 24 and freshly graduated from Columbia, stood up, cleared his throat, and spoke words that would fracture everything I thought I knew about my life. "Dad, sit down," he said, motioning to the empty armchair across from them. "You need to accept a new reality. You're not the head of this family anymore. Uncle Kyle is more like a father to us now." I froze, not because I didn't understand, but because I did. I understood exactly what he was saying. And more importantly, I understood what he wasn't saying. My younger son, Daniel, just 20, attending school at Berkeley, sat beside him, eyes fixed on the coffee table like it had the answers. He didn't deny it. He didn't defend me. That silence hit harder than any slap could have. I scanned their faces, looking for something. Regret, guilt, a flicker of shame. But there was nothing. Doris sat with her legs crossed, wearing that navy blue dress she knew I liked. Her hands were folded neatly in her lap. She didn't speak. She didn't even blink. And then there was Kyle. Kyle, the man who toasted at my wedding, the man who held my sons when they were born, who stood beside me during my father's funeral, looked relaxed. Like he belonged there. Like this wasn't news to him. And that's when I realized, it wasn't. This had been planned. This wasn't an ambush. It was a coup. I swallowed hard and looked at Doris. "Is there anything you'd like to add?" I asked, my voice calm, too calm. For a second, her mask cracked. She smoothed her dress, exhaled, then opened her mouth, only to close it again. That hesitation was the first real thing I'd seen from her all night. My mother, Louise, sat at the far end of the couch, her silver hair pinned up tightly. She didn't speak either. She just watched. Not surprised. Not disturbed. Just quiet. Which meant she knew too. "You all sat here," I said slowly, "knowing exactly what you were about to do. You planned this." Matthew didn't move. Daniel shifted slightly. Kyle smiled. Not smugly, but confidently. Like this was already done. I turned back to Doris. "When did I become obsolete to you?" I asked. "Was it last year, when I missed your birthday dinner because of the deposition? Or was it earlier? Was there a moment, a day, a night you decided I was no longer enough?" She still said nothing. I looked at Kyle, the man I'd once called brother. "You waited for me to burn out," I said. "Waited for me to be too tired, too distracted. And then you stepped in. Clever." He opened his mouth, but I cut him off with a raised hand. "No, not tonight." Then I smiled. The kind of smile I used in court right before I dismantled a witness. Kyle's posture shifted. A tiny hesitation. That was my first victory. I turned, straightened my blazer, and walked toward the door. "You're just going to walk away?" Matthew asked, his voice stiff. I stopped, turned my head slightly. "I'm not walking away," I said. "I'm preparing. By the time you realize what that means, it'll already be too late." I closed the door behind me. They thought that was the end. They thought I'd sulk, retreat, beg. They had no idea who they were dealing with. The irony wasn't lost on me. After 20 years building a fortress of stability, it took me less than a day to dismantle it. I didn't sleep that night. Not because of heartbreak or anger, but because my mind was alive, surgical, methodical. Every second they'd spent plotting behind my back, I was about to repay with precision. At 5:12 a.m., I made the first call. "Vincent," I said into the phone, my voice steady despite the hour. "Aaron," he replied cautiously, fully awake. He always was. "Effective immediately," I said. "Freeze every joint account. That includes the trust funds, the household accounts, anything Doris or the boys can touch." If it has my name on it, it's mine again. He hesitated only once. Even Daniel's education fund. I didn't flinch. Especially that one. Understood. Click. Next was Cynthia Tran, my personal attorney for over a decade. Aggressive, discreet, with a ruthlessness I used to need only for clients. Draft the divorce petition, I said. Infidelity. Emotional abandonment. Breach of trust. I want it filed and served by Friday. Cynthia didn't ask for gossip or details. She never had to. You'll have the draft in 36 hours. Click. The final call was to someone who didn't need names or explanations. Just dates, targets, and a green light. I gave it. And with that, the ground began to shift. By 9 a.m., I was back in my office reviewing trial briefs, acting like it was just another Thursday. But across the city, Doris's perfect little world began to crack. She tried to make a routine wire transfer around 9:45, probably some vendor payment, or one of those overpriced boutique candles she was always ordering. The screen flashed red. Transaction declined. She frowned. Tried again. Same error. Her face must have tightened in that familiar way, like the world had made a mistake and owed her an apology. 10 minutes later, she was in her car, the black Audi convertible I bought her on our 15th anniversary, and speeding toward the First Equity branch on Westbrook Avenue. She stormed into the bank and straight to the manager's office, still in her robe and designer sunglasses. I pictured it clearly. There's a freeze on my accounts, she snapped. Fix it. I'm afraid we can't, Mrs. Whitman, the manager said, fidgeting in his seat. Your husband issued the freeze personally this morning. The legal documents are in order. We're not authorized to reverse it without his consent. She didn't call me, not yet, because she still thought it was a glitch. Or a warning. She didn't understand. I don't warn. I act. By lunchtime, Kyle's world started to unravel. His construction firm, Whitmore Custom Design, was built on three things: my reputation, my network, and my introductions. He wasn't talented. He was charming and moderately competent, and I had made him look brilliant by aligning him with the right names. So I began pulling threads. I made 3 calls that morning to developers I'd known for decades, men who owed me favors or feared my cross-examinations too much to say no. One after another, contracts disappeared from Kyle's portfolio. Meetings were canceled. Proposals rejected. By 2 p.m., his biggest supplier terminated a multi-year agreement. No explanation. Just a polite exit. And still, I hadn't spoken a single word to them. Meanwhile, the boys were about to get their own taste of reality. Matthew, my oldest, 24, freshly out of Columbia with a shiny economics degree, was notified by email that his graduate school tuition payment had failed. When he checked his student portal, a large red banner greeted him. Payment overdue. Enrollment at risk. Daniel, my youngest, only 20, tried using his debit card to pay rent on his off-campus apartment near Berkeley. Declined. He tried his backup. Declined. Then he called the bank and was told, in those clinical, detached words, "You no longer have authorization on the funding account." They had no backup plan, because they never thought they'd need one. By 6 p.m., my phone had racked up 17 missed calls. Doris, Matthew, Daniel, even Kyle. All ignored. I let the silence speak louder than any confrontation ever could. That evening, I sat alone in the small high-rise apartment I used for overnight trials and political fundraisers. A single glass of Macallan 18 in my hand, a Miles Davis record humming low in the background. Below me, the city lights of San Francisco stretched out, buzzing, brilliant, indifferent. It felt good. I wasn't punishing them. I wasn't trying to make them feel what I felt. I was showing them what life looked like without me. They'd held a meeting on my couch to vote me out of my own family. So I took the family with me when I left. And none of them were prepared for how fast it would all collapse. They didn't call me the night it all started to collapse. Of course not. People like them, people who believe they're justified in betrayal, don't reach out when the ceiling first cracks. They wait until it caves in. Until they're buried, gasping for air, desperate for the very man they tried to replace. By morning, they were suffocating. At 8:03 a.m., my mother tried calling. She hadn't called in years, not without needing something. I didn't answer. By 8:45, there were 3 missed calls from Amanda, my wife. She was relentless when she felt control slipping. At 9:27, my older son, Daniel, left a voicemail. "Dad, Please, can you call me? Something's not right. I listened to it once. Not because I was concerned, but because I wanted to hear it. The confusion, the regret, the slow unraveling of certainty in his voice. By 11 o'clock, the panic reached Amanda's mother, Judith. Aaron, she said sharply, I don't know what's going on, but Amanda's in pieces. The boys are a mess. Can you just be reasonable? I didn't respond. Judith had encouraged Amanda to take space, to assert herself. And she had. Now they could all sit in that space together. But Judith didn't understand yet how wide that space really was, until she logged into her retirement account. Gone. Not stolen, no. I'm not a thief. But frozen. Locked. Held under a legal administrative review that would last years, thanks to new trust documentation she'd signed blindly 3 years ago when she asked for help navigating her finances. I was her trusted executor. She'd never even read the fine print. That's the thing about betrayal. It always begins with trust. Later that afternoon, I did something I hadn't done in over a decade. I drove up to my childhood home in Helena, Montana. The old place was abandoned now, windows clouded, grass overgrown. But the porch still creaked the same when I stepped on it. The air smelled like wet wood and dust. I sat in my car for nearly half an hour, just watching the house. And then I remembered. It was my 9th birthday. I had saved up for weeks from collecting bottles and mowing lawns to buy my own birthday cake. My father never liked celebrations. Said they were wasteful. Said if I wanted a cake, I could earn one. So I did. Chocolate fudge. I bought it from a little corner store with my own money. Walked it home like it was fragile gold. I even set up the plates myself, waiting for him to come through the door and say something. Happy birthday. Good job, anything. He walked in, glanced at the table, grunted, and went to bed without a word. That was the first time I realized something important. You can give people everything, your money, your loyalty, your energy, but if they never see your worth, it won't matter. They'll just keep taking. And the day you stop giving, they'll look at you like you're the one who changed. That's who Amanda became. That's who Kyle, my best friend, became. And that's what my sons, Daniel and Marcus, had become. They thought love was just uninterrupted provision. Now they were learning otherwise. That night, the messages poured in. I poured myself a scotch. Daniel, Dad, we're sorry. I didn't know she. Please, just call me. Marcus, I messed up. We all did. Just give us a chance to talk. Amanda, you've made your point. We need to fix this. Please. And then came something I hadn't expected. Kyle. He hadn't said a word in days. But now, just past midnight, a single message appeared on my screen. She promised me she'd leave you. I stared at the screen. That wasn't news I wanted, but it wasn't a surprise either. Still, it shifted something in me. Not because of Amanda's lie. I had already known she never planned to follow through, but because Kyle, the man who sat in my home pretending to be a father, had finally realized he wasn't her partner. He was her placeholder. And a few hours later, he proved it. At 3:14 a.m., a knock rattled the hotel door. I opened it, already knowing. Kyle stood there, disheveled, shirt wrinkled, eyes bloodshot. He looked like a man who had run out of illusions. She said she was leaving you, he muttered. Said the accounts were transferring. That she just needed more time. I believed her. I said nothing. I thought she was serious, he added. I gave up everything. I ruined everything. For nothing. He looked at me then, not with hatred, not with pride, but with shame. She lied to us both, didn't she? I met his eyes and nodded once, then shut the door. I didn't need to say anything, because the moment that door clicked shut, I knew something had shifted permanently. Kyle wasn't my enemy anymore. He was just another casualty of Amanda's promises. The woman who told me I wasn't enough hadn't even intended to stay with the man she replaced me with. And now? Now they were stuck with each other. Two traitors. No foundation. No future. And me? I slept better that night than I had in 19 years. Because finally, I wasn't the one waking up in disbelief. They were. Amanda had always been terrible at losing. Back when we first met, college debate team, University of Chicago, sophomore year, she once stormed out of a competition because a judge mispronounced her name. She hated being outplayed, outmaneuvered, outshined. So when her perfectly engineered new life began crumbling around her, the only move left was the one thing she'd never truly learned: how to face consequences. She showed up at my office unannounced. ignored the receptionist's protests, marched through the frosted glass doors, and slammed them shut behind her. I didn't even look up from my desk. "Aaron," she said, her voice cracking under the strain of hours, maybe days, of tears. "We need to talk." I let her sit in silence for 5 long seconds. Then I slowly closed the legal brief I'd been reading, leaned back, and looked her in the eye. "I'm listening." She stepped forward, clutching her purse like a life raft. Her hair was pulled back too tightly, her makeup cracked at the corners. She didn't look like the woman who had smiled at Kyle across my dinner table 3 weeks ago. She looked wrecked. "I know I messed up," she began. "But I never wanted this to happen. I didn't think it would go this far." That made me smile, a cold, distant smile that no longer felt foreign. "Yes, Amanda, that's exactly the problem. You didn't think." She swallowed. "We built a life, Aaron. 20 years. 2 kids. Don't throw it all away." I stood, walked slowly around the desk, and stopped just in front of her. "You threw it away," I said. "When you let him into my home. When you let him into our sons' minds. When you sat there and said he was more of a father than me." She flinched. I wanted her to. "Why didn't you fight for us?" she asked quietly. "Because you weren't ours anymore," I replied. "You were his. All I did was let you have what you chose." Her lips trembled. Then, finally, she got to the real reason she was there. "The boys, they need help. Daniel's about to lose his enrollment. Marcus can't even pay rent. Please, don't punish them for my mistake." Oh, there it was. The plea disguised as maternal concern. I shook my head. They weren't bystanders. They stood there in that room and told me I didn't matter. That Kyle did. They made their choice too. "They're just kids," she whispered. "No," I said sharply. "They're grown men, old enough to look me in the eye and call another man dad. They gambled and lost. That's how you learn." She covered her mouth with her hand. "I was scared," she said after a moment. "You'd been distant for so long. You shut down after your father died. I didn't know where I stood anymore." "And your solution was what?" I asked. "Kyle? Manipulating the kids? Planning an ambush with my own mother watching?" She said nothing. So I handed her the envelope that had been sitting on my desk for a week. Inside, the signed divorce petition. The last page included a handwritten note in my usual courtroom script. "This isn't war. This is closure." She read it, then reread it. And that was the first time I saw her knees buckle. Meanwhile, Daniel tried again to reach the financial aid office. His voice, once cocky and casual, was now panicked. "There has to be a mistake," he told the admin my dad always pays ahead. The woman didn't even look up. "As of this morning, your tuition balance is $14,632.68. If it's not paid in full by Friday, your enrollment is canceled." He hung up. Through his phone. Again, Marcus wasn't doing much better. He swiped his debit card at the gas station, declined. Tried again at the grocery store, declined. When he called the bank, the answer was chilling. "Your guardian removed your access. You're no longer authorized." "Guardian?" he asked. "I'm 21. "Correct," the banker replied. "And the account holder is your father. You are no longer listed." They drove back to what they still considered home. Knocked on the door. Waited. But it wasn't me who opened it. It was my realtor. "Hi. We have a showing scheduled for 5 p.m., she said, confused. "Can I help you?" Daniel blinked. We live here." She tilted her head. "Not anymore." They stood there in stunned silence as the door closed behind them. And for the first time in their privileged lives, they understood what it meant to be outside looking in. The last moving truck disappeared down the street, its taillights vanishing into the August haze. The house stood hollow behind me, its silence louder than any of the screaming matches we never had. I didn't flinch. I didn't cry. I simply turned and walked away. I checked into the Intercontinental downtown. Room 2305. Corner suite with city views. The kind of place I'd never brought my family, not because I couldn't afford it, but because I'd never needed to escape them until now. There was no noise except the soft hum of the minibar fridge. I poured myself a glass of whiskey. Single malt. Neat. My phone buzzed. 46 missed calls. Amanda. Marcus. Daniel. Even my mother, Ruth. I didn't answer. I let it vibrate on the nightstand like a heart monitor for the dead. But then, one more call came through. Something told me to pick it up. Not forgiveness. Not curiosity. Just closure. "Hello," I said. Her voice was barely audible. Aaron. Even now, she still sounded like she expected me to fix things. I don't understand how it got this far. I didn't sigh. I didn't speak over her. I just waited. She continued. I didn't think you'd walk away like this. I thought you'd fight. I thought you'd yell. You were hoping for a version of me you could still manipulate, I said. Silence. She sniffed. Can't we fix this? I set the glass down slowly. Amanda, you can't glue ashes back together. A pause. I still love you, she whispered. I closed my eyes. That's nice, I said. But I don't love you. And I hung up. What came next was inevitable. Daniel tried borrowing money from friends, but none of them were interested in helping the son of a man he'd publicly rejected. Marcus pleaded with his college advisor for an extension on tuition. They offered him a brochure for part-time work. Peter? His voicemail was one long confession. Aaron, you were my brother. I ruined everything. I know that now, but I never thought you'd come for everything. I didn't respond. Not out of cruelty, out of mercy. Some men need silence more than words. 7 months later, I was living in a sun-drenched adobe house in Santa Fe. Simple, quiet, no framed family portraits, no memory traps. Ella, a woman I'd met at a local bookshop, was pouring wine. She'd been through her own unraveling, married to a narcissist who never noticed she'd left until the furniture was gone. Why Santa Fe? She asked, barefoot, leaning against the balcony. Because no one here knows the man I used to be. She raised her glass. To peace, then. We clinked. And in that moment, I knew I hadn't just escaped my old life. I'd been reborn from it.